Chapter 183, The One. Passing through the membranes in front of the door, I entered the room and took a moment to look at my surroundings. The room was quite big, measuring about 50 by 50 feet. As I walked in, my nostrils instantly picked up the smell of a mixture of two very distinct smells, old wood and burning hair. The room was lit by only the glow of a small, unshaded lamp found on a moderately sized oak writing desk in the middle of the room. Behind the desk stood a large window with bronze handles that led to the balcony outside where you could overlook the garden that was on the ground floor. Not bad. Glancing at the room, my eyes instantly drifted towards the balcony of the room, behind the desk, where a large potted plant stood. With its branches intersecting with one another, the sharp tips of the branches pointed towards the sky. The plant had no leaves, and hanging from a couple of branches were 4 pale green fruits that had a red hue pulsating from them. Zurin. That was the name of the fruit that hung from the plant. And also the plant that could cure the Mindbreaker curse. In fact, not only the Mindbreaker curse but most curses out there. The fruit before me had an extremely potent effect against curses, with the Mindbreaker curse being one of the curses it could cure. Therefore, although I came here primarily for curing the curse on my parents, I was also enticed by the fact that the fruit could prove useful for me in the future. Its worth was immense. Come here. Opening the balcony door, I quickly arrived before the potted plant. Touching one of the fruits with my hand, I softly muttered, "This looks pretty tasty." Admiring the fruits before me, I was almost tempted to just take one and eat it right off the bat, but I refrained from doing so. I wasn't that stupid. After admiring the fruits for a couple of seconds, I immediately placed the whole plant into my dimensional space. Staring at the now empty spot where the plant used to be, I softly muttered, "If only I could grow these fruits." Ideally, I would have loved to have grown the plant back on Earth. Unfortunately, I couldn't. Unless I could replicate the demonic environment around here, any hopes in growing the plant were basically non-existent. Moreover, it took a couple of years for the fruit to grow, so the thought of mass-producing the fruit could only be scrapped. Oh well, it's not like there won't be a chance in the future. Even if I couldn't grow the plant now, that didn't mean I couldn't find a solution in the near future. Nothing was set in stone, and knowing this, I decided to take the whole thing with me. What next? Done taking care of the plant, I looked around for a moment. Soon, a smile appeared on my face. I guess it's about time I start plundering, no? Going back into the room, arriving before the desk, I quickly took anything that I thought was useful. From every nook and cranny of the room, I just took everything that seemed to contain any worth. Having spent basically everything that I had just to come here, I was now dirt poor. I also still owed Small Snake money, so if there was anything that looked remotely valuable I just took it. As I stole, I couldn't help but think to myself, is this how thieves feel when they steal? I didn't hate this feeling. It felt exhilarating. As my thoughts paused there, my hand froze for a split second just as I was about to pick up another object. Although it is nice, I should definitely not get addicted to this feeling. Nothing good would come out of me getting addicted to stealing. Well, though I said that I continued to plunder the area freely. As I took most of the items, I also made sure to be careful when taking some of the stuff. I didn't take everything. Just because something looked valuable, it didn't mean that it contained no thorns. There were definitely items that I couldn't take, else the consequences could become disastrous. I made sure to stay away from anything that looked like an artifact or emanated strong demonic energy. There was definitely a chance that Marquis Azeroth could trace the item, and if such a thing happened, I was in for a whole world of trouble. This was even if I returned back on Earth. Although it took quite a lot of materials to travel to Earth, as portals required the usage of expensive and rare ingredients, if Marquis Azeroth was hellbent on taking revenge, which seemed likely given the fact that I was pretty much taking everything he owned, I could kiss my sorry ass.
Goodbye.
Having a blood feud with a Marquis-ranked demon when you were only rank yourself wasn't something that I could handle. Sorry, but no thank you. Bingo. As I was plundering, opening the drawer of the desk, my eyes were instantly drawn towards a couple of items. More specifically towards a gray metallic cube and a couple of black-looking fruits. Apart from the Zurin fruit, these items were what I was looking for. Without hesitation, I took everything. This should be everything. With everything gathered, checking every nook and cranny of the office, and making sure that I took everything that I could possibly take, I nodded my head in satisfaction. 4 hours? Glancing at my watch and seeing that I only had 4 hours left, I decided to quickly leave the place. It was about time I reunited with Kevin. It wouldn't be nice of me if I just left without leaving behind a present. Just before I left, recalling something, I placed a small black box on the wooden table. It was a small present that I wanted to give to the demons. After all, I did take quite a lot of stuff from them. It would have been impolite of me to just come and go without leaving anything in return. Hopefully it'll be appreciated. Having taken everything that I wanted, I comfortably left the room by once bypassing the 2 membranes at the entrance. Glancing at the translucent membranes at the front of the building, a chuckle involuntarily escaped from my lips. I wonder how Marquis Azeroth would react once he finds out about how I raided his whole place. Well, sadly for me, I wouldn't be able to tell as I would be long gone. However, once Marquis Azeroth did indeed find out about what had happened, if he was still alive by the time the war ended, I could already imagine the scenery outside. Spotting Angelica warily glancing towards her surroundings to make sure that no one was coming, smiling, I casually threw an item at her. Here, catch. Raising her hand and catching the item, Angelica skeptically looked at the item in her hand. Not even a second after glancing at the time, opening her eyes wide, Angelica's voice raised a few pitches. What's this? Wait. Seeing Angelica's shocked expression, smiling, I nodded my head in confirmation.
Yeah.
It's a devil fruit, a highly concentrated one at that. Elves, dwarves, and humans all shared one thing in common. They used mana. Orcs on the other hand utilized aura, and demons utilized demonic energy. As I've mentioned before, devil fruits were fruits that improved a demon's bloodline. Although ranks were what assessed someone's strength, for demons their strength was assessed from the purity of their bloodline. The greater the purity of their bloodline, the stronger they were. A devil fruit improved bloodline purity, and this was exactly why it was extremely coveted by the demon. It was a catalyst that enabled demons to drastically improve their strength. Moreover, the better the quality of the fruit, the greater the benefits. And with the fruit being one that I had taken from a Marquis-ranked demon, there was no question about the quality of it. Breaking Viscount rank with it shouldn't be difficult. Glancing one last time at the room behind me, turning my attention back to Angelica who was looking at the fruit in her hand with shining eyes, I smiled. As I've promised, I've now held my end of the deal. See, I'm a man of my words. Staring at the fruit in her hand, Angelica closed her eyes slightly as a soft voice escaped from her lips. Thank you. Her long-cherished dream of finally reaching the Viscount rank was within an arm's reach. She had tried countless times to break through this rank to no avail as she miserably failed each time. She had originally thought that she would still take another 5 years before breaking through, but now with the fruit in her hands, she could now be able to quickly break through to Viscount rank without a hitch. Something that she had longed for a very long time. Staring at my watch and seeing the time, my brows knit for a split second before I turned to Angelica and said, "All right, let's go back, we don't have much time to spare." Taking her eyes off of the fruit, Angelica nodded her head. Okay. Almost forgot. Just as we were about to leave, recalling something, my footsteps paused. Angelica, before we go down, I have another deal to propose to you. Tilting her head, Angelica's delicate brows knit slightly. A deal? Seeing the look of confusion on Angelica's face, a large smile appeared on my face as I softly said.
Yeah.
A deal. Hey, I'm back. Walking towards the bottom floor wasn't that hard, although things have quieted down in the prison area, indicating to me that things have been sorted there. Most of the remaining demons inside of the mansion were still most likely there trying to figure out what had happened. Thus, just like before, my path was fairly unobstructed. Although there were a couple of occasions in which a demon passed by near me, with their focus being on either the war outside or the incident in the prison, I was somehow able to avoid being detected. And so thanks to that, I was able to quickly reach Kevin's location. Obviously, before reuniting with Kevin and Silig, I had asked Angelica to turn back into a ring. Her presence was something that couldn't be revealed. Turning his head and spotting me in the distance, Kevin asked, "Have you sorted out everything?" "Yup." Nodding my head and looking around the area we were in, I was soon able to spot a large metallic golden door in the distance with fine patterns covering the whole door. In the middle of the door was a small slot the size of a cube. Pointing towards the door, I asked, "So what's the situation here?" Similarly glancing at the door in the distance, Kevin had an odd look on his face. "Actually, it's surprisingly quiet here." "Meaning?" "Meaning that there are not that many demons here protecting the treasury. In fact, there's barely anyone here." Pausing and turning his attention back to me, Kevin continued, "Apart from the area that leads to the door, there's practically no demon in here. From what I've figured, the demons are confident in the door's durability, hence why they don't pay too much attention to the place." Hearing Kevin's evaluation and placing my hand on my chin, I nodded my head as I softly mumbled, "Well, I can't say I'm too surprised by this info. From what I remembered writing in the novel, the door before us was something that even Marquis Azeroth couldn't forcibly break open. Made with special metal alloys and materials, the door was practically impenetrable. Unless you had the key to the place, you practically stood no chance at breaking in. This also explained why the security here was lax. They were just that confident in the fact that no one could enter the place. Fortunately, this made things a lot easier for me. With barely any demon present, I could comfortably open the treasury without any obstructions. Plus, if a demon really did come here, glancing at Silig, who was standing upright next to Kevin, I knew that I could count on him. Thus, turning around and glancing at the door in the distance, I confidently said, "Leave the matter of breaking into the treasury to me." Weirdly looking at me, Kevin asked, "Was the reason you were missing because of the door?" Nodding my head, I didn't deny what Kevin said. "Yup." Although it was only part of the reason as to why I went to Marquis Azeroth's living space, I did in fact go there with the intention of getting the key to the treasury. After all, aside from the Zurin fruit, there were a lot of other things that I wanted. Like the Flute of Artemis, and a couple of other things that would drastically boost my strength. Alright, it's about time we entered the treasury. Taking out the cube-like object that I had gotten from Marquis Azeroth's living space, I calmly walked towards the large golden door and placed the cube in the small slot in the middle of the door. Shortly after inserting the cube inside of the slot, the door suddenly glowed in a golden light and the metallic sound of the door opening rang across the space. Glancing at Silig to make sure he was guarding the entrance, a smile appeared on my face as the contents that were on the other side of the door was revealed. Finally, it was time that I reaped the rewards of my trip. Chapter 184, The 1-2. Fuea. As the door opened, revealing what lay behind it, I knew that all of the struggles that I had gone through this past month were finally going to pay off. In a very lucrative way at that. Clank. Once the doors fully opened up, revealing what was behind the large door, my footsteps halted for a second as my mouth opened up slightly. This is more than I expected. A vermilion rug ran down from the door all the way to the end of the room. Banners with golden embroideries swung gently from the side of the walls that were coated in a golden luster. Between each banner stood a large candlestick, almost all of them lit and in turn illuminating the room below them. Around the room were rows upon rows of glass-protected cabinets with all sorts of weapons and artifacts hidden behind them. Artifacts, natural treasures, weapons, and many other miscellaneous items were all stored inside the cabinets. Oh wow! Entering the room and taking a look at the place, Kevin exclaimed in disbelief. This is a lot more than I expected. The number of treasures present was beyond what Kevin had ever expected. Although he expected there to be something, he did not expect there to be so many items here. All of the stuff here could probably fetch him a hefty sum of money. Just the weapons alone were enough for anyone to drool over. Let's go, Silig, you wait outside. Entering the treasury, the first thing I did was tell Silig to wait outside. There were a couple of reasons as to why I kept him outside, one to guard the entrance in case demons found out we broke in, and two because there was a chance that something that detected the presence of orcs was installed in this place. Just like the living quarters of Marquis Azeroth. I couldn't afford to take any chances, therefore I just asked him to stay outside. Glancing at me, who was similarly looking at the treasury with shining eyes, Kevin asked, "How are we going to take the stuff? Should we just break all of the cabinets?" Hearing Kevin's suggestion, I shook my head in disappointment. If only that was possible. The cabinets before us were made of special materials that were extremely durable. So, even if we forcefully tried to break them open, it would probably take a long time to open each and every single cabinet present. I honestly wanted to take everything with me, but given the time left we had, I could only select a few of them to take. Unaware of my thoughts, Kevin asked, "So if we can't break them, what are we going to do?" Glancing at Kevin, I reassured him. "Don't worry, I've already thought it through. Although we can't take everything, I pretty much know which stuff is the most useful for us." In the novel, Kevin pretty much took every single item in the treasury, so I already knew what items there were and which ones were the most valuable. Therefore, without hesitation, I instantly made my way towards one of the cabinets closest to us. "All right, this should be the first one." Following me, halting his steps as he suddenly thought of something, Kevin suggested, "Wait, what if we put everything in our dimensional space and bring them back to Earth?" Hearing Kevin's suggestion, I shook my head. "I don't think we can do that." "Why?" Brushing my hair to the side, I pointed towards the bottom part of the cabinets. "Look, the cabinets are attached to the ground. We could have probably done that if we had more time, but we don't, so we can only break a select few cabinets." Fair enough." Staring at the cabinets, Kevin indeed noticed that they were directly attached to the ground, making it impossible to just put them in the dimensional space. Even if they did cut the bottom part, it would take way longer than just breaking the windows, therefore, Kevin knew that he could only give up on the idea of bringing everything. Though disappointing, Kevin knew that he was partly responsible for this as he took too much time counting the castle. Pointing and moving before one of the cabinets in the distance, I urged Kevin to follow me.
Yeah.
"Let's not waste any more time, and let's start our thieving spree." Speechless by my comments, Kevin wanted to refute, but realizing what I said wasn't wrong, he could only silently follow my lead. "All right." Arriving before a certain cabinet and standing next to me, Kevin curiously asked, "This one?" Nodding my head, I placed my hand on the glass of the cabinet as I moved my face closer to get a closer look at what was behind.
Yeah.
"This is the first cabinet we should be opening." Glancing at the cabinet before him that had many different things on display ranging from fruits, herbs, and many other things that seemed to be naturally made, Kevin curiously asked, "Are those natural treasures?" Nodding my head, I affirmed, "Yup, natural treasures." Hearing my response, Kevin's brows knit together. Glancing at me, he asked. Natural treasure? But will they work on us? Since this world was a plant inhabited by orcs, most of the natural treasures before us could only be consumed by the orcs, thus making them useless to us. Kevin's question was appropriate, however, just because most of them were items that were only useful for orcs, that didn't mean that there were only items that only orcs could consume. In fact, some herbs could in fact be ingested by humans. And I knew this because right in the corner of a cabinet were 3 stalks of grass that had a tint of blue. Sky grass. A natural treasure that could also be found on Earth and that both Kevin and I could consume. The reason why I directly jumped to E+ rank when I was only E- rank was because I was already close to reaching E rank. Upon consumption, it would in turn allow for both of us to rank up. Kevin to D rank, and me to possibly E+ rank. The reason why I directly jumped to E+ rank when I was only E- rank was because I was already close to reaching E rank. With 4 months passing since my last rank increase, I knew that it was only a matter of time before I reached E rank, therefore, with the aid of the sky grass, reaching E+ wasn't impossible. And so, staring at Kevin, I pointed towards the grass at the corner of the cabinet. Most of them won't work on us as only orcs can use them, but if you look closely over there you can see the stalks of sky grass. Spotting the sky grass in the corner of the cabinet, Kevin's eyes lit up. Oh, I see them, what grade are they? Enough to help us rank up once, so I think they are fairly good, plus those 2 treasures are not my main goal, but it's the other stuff. I see. Nodding his head and turning his attention away from the sky grass, Kevin glanced at the other natural treasures. Turning his head around and looking at me, he curiously asked. What about the rest, is it for Silic? Nodding my head, I didn't deny it.
Yeah.
I did promise him that I'll help him get stronger. This was the condition for helping us. That makes sense. Silic was indeed very helpful. Without his help entering the castle would have been a lot harder than originally planned, plus with him, an element of safety was added to their trip, so it was only appropriate that he got rewarded for it. Turning his attention back towards the cabinet, Kevin asked. So how are we supposed to break this open? Pointing towards the sheath of his sword, I casually said. Just use your sword. Just that? Shrugging my shoulders, I nodded my head.
Yeah.
Although the glass is durable, your strength should be enough to cut it. Although it may take some time, it should work. Taken aback, Kevin had a weird look on his face as he unsheathed his sword and channeled his mana into it. As the red hue around his sword was becoming stronger, turning his attention back to me, he asked. All right, whilst I do that, what will you do? Glancing around the room, my eyes soon paused on a couple of cabinets as I responded. I'll open the other stuff. Looking in the direction that I was looking at, Kevin nodded his head. Okay, you do your thing, I'll call you when I'm done. Yup, that would be ideal. Once you're done with the cabinet you're on, just take whatever you want. Will do. Aight, good luck. Separating from Kevin and arriving before another cabinet, my attention was instantly drawn towards a pale green flute that sat in the middle of the cabinet. A white hue shrouded the flute, making it look really impressive. I've finally found you. The Flute of Artemis, a less than S ranked artifact. And the item that would propel Ava to a whole new level. The item was probably something that Marquis Azeroth took back when he was not on this planet. Perhaps from the dwarves, elves, or even humans. I wasn't too sure. But considering his status as a Marquis-ranked demon, it wouldn't be strange if he had been to all of these places. Although the flute was a less than S-ranked artifact, it could only be used by beast tamers and thus was not very coveted, hence why it was stuck in this place to collect dust. Moreover, looking at the cracks on the side of the flute, I knew that it was currently damaged and hence why it only had the aura of a less than D ranked artifact. But that was fine. I knew of a way to fix it, and the fact that it was damaged was also not a bad thing. With the rank of the item being low, Ava could safely use it without being too overwhelmed by it, as high-ranked artifacts were not something low-ranking people could use. The reason was simple. The mana needed to activate a less than S-ranked artifact was not something a less than F-ranked as Ava could use, so this was perfect for her. Alright, enough time wasting. Without wasting time, shrouding my sword with mana, I quickly tried to break the cabinet open. And oh boy, it was tedious. For the next 20 minutes or so, tracing my sword around the glass of the cabinet, I patiently channeled my mana through my sword as I tried to break it open. Crack! It was a long and laborious task, but finally, after hearing a slight cracking sound coming from the glass, I knew that I was almost there. Crash! Not long after the first crack appeared, came the second one and then the third one. Finally, after a couple of minutes, the whole glass shattered as a loud sound resounded across the place. Without hesitation, as soon as the glass shattered, I quickly grabbed the flute. Finally! Grabbing the flute and staring at it, I knew that I had finally accomplished one of my main goals in coming here. Is there anything else? Checking the cabinet, I soon found a couple of other things which I took without hesitation. Although I wasn't too sure of what they did, I still took them with me and put them in my dimensional space. I'll check them later. After I made sure that there was nothing else left, clapping my hands together, I softly mumbled. Alright, now that I have the flute, it's time I go get what I came here for. Turning around, my eyes soon paused towards a certain cabinet in the distance where a certain black book was being displayed. Without hesitation, I instantly arrived before the cabinet and repeated the same glass-breaking process. Crash! In a similar fashion to before, 20 minutes after I started breaking the glass, the sound of glass shattering rang across the place. Ignoring it, I quickly grabbed the black book from behind the glass. Yes. Staring at the book in my hand, my heart beat intensely as I flipped it around and read the skill description through my status window. D with a 1. A skill that enables the user to instill fear into the opponent's minds, resulting in them feeling like they were standing before a sovereign that overlooked everything. The skill may work on individuals who are one rank higher than them. However, if the difference between the two parties is greater than 2 ranks, the skill effect diminishes. This is the skill. Reading the skill description before my eyes, a large smile appeared on my face. Although it may not look like it, this skill was extremely strong. Even though it was only a D ranked, the effects of the skill were something that made anyone want to drool over them. By instilling fear into the opponents, you were essentially gaining the upper hand in both battle and negotiations. Like I've said before, battles were 90% mentality and 10% skill. If I could have the upper hand mentally, the chances of me winning were far higher. Moreover, this skill added with my other skill, Monarch's Indifference. Smiling to myself, I couldn't help but mutter. Oh, the possibilities. Just the thought of using those two skills together sent chills down my body. They perfectly complemented each other. One skill that erases all emotions, and another that instilled fear into the opponent. The possibilities were endless. Schwa. Without a second thought, placing my hand on the book, I softly muttered. Sorry, Jean, but I'll be taking this from you.
Yeah.
The skill should have originally belonged to Jean, however, given that the plotline had pretty much derailed from the original and that I was now practically destroying it with me starting a war and being in Amora, I honestly didn't care anymore. Although me taking the skill would cause Jin's future self to be weaker, given his current mindset and change, perhaps he might actually be stronger. Who knows? Either way, the future that I knew was no longer there. It was about time I started becoming a bit greedier for the sake of myself. After all, I've pretty much have come to terms with the fact that I now was just as part of this world as everybody else. There was no use denying it. I was now also responsible for defeating the Demon King just as much as Kevin was. Therefore, I knew that I had to be greedier. With the plotline no longer being the same as before, it was also about time I started taking things into my own hands. Thwop! Shortly after placing my hand on the book mysteriously glowed as it soon disappeared from my hand as black particles flew in the air. Opening my eyes slightly, a satisfied smile appeared on my lips. I had finally learned a new skill. Chapter 185, Return 1. Opening my eyes slightly, 2 dull gray eyes replaced my usual clear blue eyes. Are we done? Snapping me out of my thoughts was Kevin's voice in the distance. Turning my attention back to him, my eyes soon returned to their usual blue color. Smiling, I nodded my head.
Yeah.
I guess it's about time we return to Earth. Plamf.
Oof.
This was one long month, huh? Understanding that we were about to go back to Earth, a faint smile appeared on Kevin's lips as he slumped on the ground. Recalling what had happened this past month, Kevin felt tired. From infiltrating the Orc capital to starting a war to infiltrating the most secured location in Seton. A lot happened this past month. Nodding my head, I scratched my nose as I agreed.
Yeah.
A very stressful one, but it's not like it wasn't without any gains. Staring at the items in his hands, Kevin nodded his head. I guess so. This trip, which was supposed to be something he had agreed to repay Rin for the 5-star sword manual, turned out to be much more fruitful than he had ever imagined. From the sky grass to a couple of other things he picked up from the treasury, it was a truly fruitful trip. Staring at Kevin slumped on the floor, recalling something, I smacked my hand with my fist. Right, I've got to go somewhere again. Opening his mouth slightly, Kevin looked at me weirdly as he rolled his eyes. Again? How many times was it now? Was this the 3rd or the 4th time now? Rin just simply loved to disappear whenever he wanted. Kevin was not amused. Unaware of Kevin's thoughts, I seriously nodded my head.
Yeah.
It won't take long, by the time you set up the portal I should already be back. Waving his hand, Kevin yawned as he lazily said. All right, be quick. Smiling, turning my attention back to Silik as I left the treasury, I urged for him to follow me. Follow me, Silik. Nodding his head, Silik did as I instructed. Yes. Halting my footsteps and glancing at Kevin once again, I pointed towards Silik next to me as I raised my voice slightly. Kevin, say.
Goodbye.
To Silik, you won't be seeing him for a while. Turning his head in my direction, Kevin's right brow raised. He's not coming back to Earth with us? Shaking my head I responded. Unfortunately not, I've got other plans for him. Frowning for a couple of seconds, Kevin nodded his head and waved in Silik's direction. All right, see you, Silik. For the past few days, Kevin spent quite a bit of time with Silik. Although Silik didn't speak much, Kevin had actually gotten along with him quite well these past few days. This was mostly due to the fact that Rin just kept disappearing, leaving the two together for prolonged periods of time. They were bound to get along. Thus why Kevin felt that it was a bit of a pity saying
goodbye
to him now, but he also understood that he might end up meeting him again in the future. As long as he was with Rin, he was bound to meet Silik again.
Goodbye,
human. Nodding his head, Silik's deep voice echoed across the treasury. All right, it's time to go. Finished with the goodbyes, turning around, Silik and I directly left the treasury. I still had plans for him. After separating from Kevin, Silik and I quickly returned to the prison area. As Silic and I moved closer to the prison area, we could hear the faint sound of fighting inside. From time to time the muffled sound of fighting that came from outside the castle could also be heard, but those sounds were primarily drowned by the sounds coming from the prison. Still, although it was loud, it seemed as though the fight was coming to a conclusion as the sound was becoming fainter and fainter by the minute. Stopping not so far from the entrance of the prison, I looked towards the entrance of the prison that was currently guarded by 2 demons. Behind them, the door that led to the prison was still open, therefore I was able to see everything that was going on inside. Wapa dash. Staring at the fight happening inside of the prison area, it looked as though the orcs seemed to be on the verge of losing as the demons around them were working together to bind them with special-looking ropes that seemed to be able to negate aura circulation. No matter how much the orcs tried to fight back, it seemed as though they were going to lose very soon. As I saw what was happening inside, a smile emerged on my lips. Perfect, I'm still not too late. Turning around and looking towards the ceiling of the hall I was in, I placed my hand on my chin as I nodded my head and softly muttered. I guess it's about time I presented the gift. Glancing at my watch, looking towards the guards fighting against the orcs at the entrance of the prison, I subsequently tapped on the screen. A massive explosion followed my tap on the watch and the castle shook. What's going on? What happened? Wapa dash. Taking advantage of the distraction that the explosion created, the 2 orcs that were on the verge of losing instantly become more fierce as they tried to break through their encirclement. Damn it! What the hell is happening? Wapa dash. Looking towards the ceiling where the explosion came from, I couldn't help but mutter. Oh wow, that was one big of an explosion. When moving to the 4th floor with Angelica, I had placed all sorts of explosives around the castle. There was a specific reason as to why I did so, and currently, the explosion that happened should be coming from the 4th floor, Marquis Azeroth's office. One of the places I had placed a bomb in. Honestly, the explosion was much louder than I had expected, but this was exactly what I was aiming for. Taking advantage of the chaos and the fact that the demons' attention was back to the orcs who were rampaging even more fiercely, once again entering the prison, Silic and I directly moved deeper into the prison. Stopping before one of the cells in the depth of the prison area, breaking the chains and killing the demon that was residing in it whilst simultaneously disposing of its corpse, I looked at Silic and pointed towards the cell. Here, you stay in here. Confused, Silic asked. Here? Nodding my head, I took out a brow backpack from my dimensional space and threw it at Silic.
Yeah.
Take this. Taking the bag, Silic became even more confused. What are these? Didn't I promise you that I'll help you get revenge? Opening the bag, Silic nodded his head. Yes. Smiling as I looked at the bag in Silic's hands, I softly said. That's the key to your revenge. I see. As he looked through the bag, Silic fell into a daze for a split second as he instantly understood my intentions. The bag he was holding was currently filled to the brim with natural treasures, all of whom were extremely rare and things that he had only seen his commanders consume back when Amora was not under the demon's control. Each and every one of the treasures could cause massive conflicts within the orcs nowadays. And they were all items that Kevin and I took from the treasury below. They were all items that should have originally belonged to the orcs, but as the demons invaded Amora they were taken away, and as Marquis Azeroth could not consume them, they were left on display in the treasury as a possible incentive for the orcs that were on their side. They were priceless. And Silic knew this. Seeing Silic's reaction, I smiled and continued. These items should be enough to help you break through to S rank in a couple of years. This should put you on the same level as the Orc Chief and Marquis Azeroth. Pausing for a second and looking in the direction of where the war was happening, I softly muttered. By the time you achieve S rank the war outside should be coming to an end. The war was going to be a long one. Wars always tended to be extremely long and this one was not an exception. With both sides currently being in a deadlock, I estimated that the war would end in a couple of years. Just around the same time Silic should be reaching rank. This was what I was aiming for. This trip, which was supposed to be something he had agreed to repay Rin for the 5-star sword manual, turned out to be much more fruitful than he had ever imagined. From the sky grass to a couple of other things he picked up from the treasury, it was a truly fruitful trip. Staring at Kevin slumped on the floor, recalling something, I smacked my hand with my fist. Right, I've got to go somewhere again. Opening his mouth slightly, Kevin looked at me weirdly as he rolled his eyes. Again? How many times was it now? Was this the third or the fourth time now? Rin just simply loved to disappear whenever he wanted. Kevin was not amused. Unaware of Kevin's thoughts, I seriously nodded my head.
Yeah.
It won't take long, by the time you set up the portal I should already be back. Waving his hand, Kevin yawned as he lazily said. All right, be quick. Smiling, turning my attention back to Silic as I left the treasury, I urged for him to follow me. Follow me, Silic. Nodding his head, Silic did as I instructed. Yes. Halting my footsteps and glancing at Kevin once again, I pointed towards Silic next to me as I raised my voice slightly. Kevin, say
Goodbye.
to Silic, you won't be seeing him for a while. Turning his head in my direction, Kevin's right brow raised. He's not coming back to Earth with us? Shaking my head I responded. Unfortunately not, I've got other plans for him. Frowning for a couple of seconds, Kevin nodded his head and waved in Silic's direction. All right, see you, Silic. For the past few days, Kevin spent quite a bit of time with Silic. Although Silic didn't speak much, Kevin had actually gotten along with him quite well these past few days. This was mostly due to the fact that Rin just kept disappearing, leaving the two together for prolonged periods of time. They were bound to get along. Thus why Kevin felt that it was a bit of a pity saying
goodbye
to him now, but he also understood that he might end up meeting him again in the future. As long as he was with Rin, he was bound to meet Silic again.
Goodbye,
human. Nodding his head, Silic's deep voice echoed across the treasury. All right, it's time to go. Finished with the goodbyes, turning around, Silic and I directly left the treasury. I still had plans for him. After separating from Kevin, Silic and I quickly returned to the prison area. As Silic and I moved closer to the prison area, we could hear the faint sound of fighting inside. From time to time the muffled sound of fighting that came from outside the castle could also be heard, but those sounds were primarily drowned by the sounds coming from the prison. Still, although it was loud, it seemed as though the fight was coming to a conclusion as the sound was becoming fainter and fainter by the minute. Stopping not so far from the entrance of the prison, I looked towards the entrance of the prison that was currently guarded by two demons. Behind them, the door that led to the prison was still open, therefore I was able to see everything that was going on inside. Wapa dash. Staring at the fight happening inside of the prison area, it looked as though the orcs seemed to be on the verge of losing as the demons around them were working together to bind them with special-looking ropes that seemed to be able to negate aura circulation. No matter how much the orcs tried to fight back, it seemed as though they were going to lose very soon. As I saw what was happening inside, a smile emerged on my lips. Perfect, I'm still not too late. Turning around looking towards the ceiling of the hall I was in, I placed my hand on my chin as I nodded my head and softly muttered. I guess it's about time I presented the gift. Glancing at my watch, looking towards the guards fighting against the orcs at the entrance of the prison, I subsequently tapped on the screen. A massive explosion followed my tap on the watch and the castle shook. What's going on? What happened? Wapa dash. Taking advantage of the distraction that the explosion created, the two orcs that were on the verge of losing instantly become more fierce as they tried to break through their encirclement. Damn it! What the hell is happening? Wapa dash. Looking towards the ceiling where the explosion came from, I couldn't help but mutter. Oh wow, that was one big of an explosion. When moving to the 4th floor with Angelica, I had placed all sorts of explosives around the castle. There was a specific reason as to why I did so, and currently, the explosion that happened should be coming from the 4th floor, Marquis Azeroth's office. One of the places I had placed a bomb in. Honestly, the explosion was much louder than I had expected, but this was exactly what I was aiming for. Taking advantage of the chaos and the fact that the demon's attention was back to the orcs who were rampaging even more fiercely, once again entering the prison, Scylla and I directly moved deeper into the prison. Stopping before one of the cells in the depth of the prison area, breaking the chains and killing the demon that was residing in it whilst simultaneously disposing of its corpse, I looked at Scylla and pointed towards the cell. Here, you stay in here. Confused, Scylla asked. Here? Nodding my head, I took out a brow backpack from my dimensional space and threw it at Scylla.
Yeah.
Take this. Taking the bag, Scylla became even more confused. What are these? Didn't I promise you that I'll help you get revenge? Opening the bag, Scylla nodded his head. Yes. Smiling as I looked at the bag in Scylla's hands, I softly said. That's the key to your revenge. I see. As he looked through the bag, Scylla fell into a daze for a split second as he instantly understood my intentions. The bag he was holding was currently filled to the brim with natural treasures, all of whom were extremely rare and things that he had only seen his commanders consume back when Amora was not under the demon's control. Each and every one of the treasures could cause massive conflicts within the orcs nowadays. And they were all items that Kevin and I took from the treasury below. They were all items that should have originally belonged to the orcs, but as the demons invaded Amora they were taken away, and as Marquis Azeroth could not consume them, they were left on display in the treasury as a possible incentive for the orcs that were on their side. They were priceless. And Scylla knew this. Seeing Scylla's reaction, I smiled and continued. These items should be enough to help you break through to S rank in a couple of years. This should put you on the same level as the Orc Chief and Marquis Azeroth. Pausing for a second and looking in the direction of where the war was happening, I softly muttered. By the time you achieve S rank the war outside should be coming to an end. The war was going to be a long one. Wars always tended to be extremely long, and this one was not an exception. With both sides currently being in a deadlock, I estimated that the war would end in a couple of years. Just around the same time Scylla should be reaching rank. This was what I was aiming for. Turning my attention back to Scylla, I pointed at him and seriously said. And that is when your time will come. Once the war reaches its ending, I want you to go out and kill both Marquis Azeroth and the Orc Chief. With the war going on for several years they will both be exhausted and injured. When you come out as a newly emerged rank no one will be able to fight against you. Pausing for a second and deeply staring at Scylla, I clenched my fist and slowly said. Kill them both and become the new Orc Chief. Yes. This was the plan that I had envisioned as soon as I saw the opportunity present itself. Make Scylla become the new Orc Chief. With him becoming the new Orc Chief and expanding his territory, that was the same as me expanding my forces. With Scylla working under me, in the near future, I would have my very own Orc Legion that I could use in my fight with the Demon King. Just the thought of it made me involuntarily smile. Now, this was what you called an important piece. Staring at me and nodding solemnly, Scylla asked. What about the two other demons residing in the other two cities, won't they interfere? Turning my attention back to Scylla, I reassured. Don't worry about the other Marquis-ranked demons, they will most likely not be there. With demons not being united this wasn't surprising. As Marquis Azeroth was fighting the Orc Chief, the two other Marquis-rank demons were most probably just enjoying the show. Although they wouldn't let Azeroth die, they still wanted to weaken him so that they could take his treasures and possessions. That's just how demons were. Greedy and opportunistic. Therefore, taking advantage of their greediness, Silic could easily sweep in and kill both Marquis Azeroth and the Orc Chief before the two other Marquis-rank demons could have enough time to figure out the situation. I understand. Urging Silic to enter the prison and binding him with the chains which no longer worked, I continued explaining my plans. After you kill them both, take over Seton and grow your forces. With the terrain around here, you can easily regrow the crops from before, and from there you should easily be able to rejuvenate the orc forces of the past. Frowning, Silic asked. Will the Marquis-ranked demons move after I take over Seton? Shaking my head, I confidently said. They won't move. Given Silic's strength and the fact that they were very far from Seton unless they waged an all-out war, they wouldn't be able to defeat Silic without risking their own life. Given the demon's selfish and preservative nature, there was a low chance of them trying to fight Silic. At most, they would try to annoy him from time to time, but unless they were confident in their strength, they wouldn't move. Glancing at Silic to make sure he understood my plan, I asked. Do you understand my plan? Nodding his head, Silic said. Yes. Good. Smiling at the fact that Silic understood, I closed my eyes slightly as I softly muttered. I hope this somewhat makes up for what I've done. Although what I did was messed up as I started a war that will lead to a lot of demons and orcs dying, I was also giving the orcs a new chance. Near the end of the novel, Amora would disappear as the Demon King directly swallows the whole planet in order to increase his strength even more. The orcs here only had one end. Death. And so, by allowing Silic to take over, they were essentially going to be an asset that I would use to fight against the very thing that would cause their death. Therefore, I'd like to think that this war was for the sake of their future. I knew that this was bullsh*t, but it was in a way helping me cope with the fact that I was changing. Had I have done this before back when I had just come into this world, I would have never imagined myself starting a war just for the sake of getting a few items. But the more I stayed in this world, the more I realized that I needed to change. I could no longer be as soft as I was before. If I wanted to stay in this world, I needed to become like the others. I needed to make decisions that I would have never done before. Still, although I said that, I made sure to set up a line that I wouldn't dare cross. As crossing that line would make me no different from the villains and the hypocritical heroes of this world. Hopefully, that situation will never happen. Recalling something and taking out a white scroll from my dimensional space, I unscrolled the scroll and pointed towards the bottom of it. Oh, before I forget, I'll give you this, and here is where you need to sign. Looking at the scroll, Silic tilted his head in confusion. What is this? Smiling, I casually said. A demon contract. Taken aback, Silic's voice deepened. A demon contract? Nodding my head, I explained.
Yeah.
Back on Earth I have a demon colleague and she gave it to me. I'm sorry, but if you don't want to get caught, you have to sign this. Hopefully, he doesn't think too much into it. Although it wasn't the best excuse, I could only think of this excuse at the moment. Fortunately, it wasn't that weird for demons to ally themselves with others, so it wasn't that unbelievable. Okay. Before you decide to sign it, only sign it after I'm gone. I don't know what time measurement you use here, so sign it after you hear another explosion in the distance. Pausing slightly and staring deeply at Silic, I repeated. By the way, I can't stress enough about the fact that you need to sign the contract. If you don't sign it, your revenge will never happen. With every orc and demon present inside the prison having signed a contract, if Silic was the only one that didn't have it, he would without a doubt get exposed. Therefore, after convincing Angelica to hand me the contract, I immediately presented it to Silic. It sort of acted as a protective halo that prevented demons from finding out he wasn't actually a prisoner. Furthermore, the reason why I told him to sign it later was because I didn't want Silic to know that Angelica was with me on this planet, as once he signed the contract he would get a general idea of where she was. Him thinking that Angelica was not here was a must. I couldn't let him link everything that had happened to him to me. That aside, convincing Angelica wasn't actually that hard since this deal was quite advantageous for her. Once Silic broke through to rank, with her soul being linked to his, she too would get a massive boost in power. Although the downside was that she would die if Silic died too, she also knew that this was the best chance she could get to breaking even higher up. Therefore, after I explained to her my plan, she immediately agreed. Thus, looking at Silic, who was remaining quiet, I asked, "Have you understood?" Staring at me, after a short pause, Silic said, "Understood." Smiling, I turned around and prepared myself to return back to Earth. Turning around and glancing at Silic one last time, I said, "Good, I will see you again in a couple of years. Hopefully when I see you again you'll show me something surprising." Bounded by the chains with the bag filled with treasures hidden in the corner of the prison, Silic's deep voice rang across the prison cell. "If this really does help me achieve revenge, I will swear loyalty towards you." Smiling at Silic, I happily said, "Then I wish you success." I didn't take his words to heart. Although orcs were creatures that were true to their words, I wasn't someone that would just believe in someone's words. I needed reassurances. Hence why I made him sign a pact with Angelica. With Angelica under my control, no matter what he did, he would still be within my control. Although this would only last for 5 years, as Angelica was only under me for that period of time, I wasn't worried. I had already made preparations for it. Everything should still be within my control. Chapter 186, Return 2. You sorted everything out?
Yeah.
Returning back to the treasury, I stared at the portal that stood before Kevin. Just like the first time I saw it, the black portal in front of Kevin emitted fine undulations of magic, resulting in a whirlpool of different colors circling around the portal. "Hurry up, the portal is ready, let's go back to Earth." "All right, I'm coming." Having achieved my goal in coming here, and having sorted Silic's situation, I knew that it was about time we returned back to Earth. Glancing at the walls of the castle, I could hear the faint sounds of fighting coming from both the insides and the outsides of the castle. The insides coming from the orcs in the prison, and the outside coming from the war that was happening in Amora. Although I would have loved to watch the war that was happening, I knew that it wasn't the time. The war was merely a means to achieve my goals. Perhaps once I returned to Amora in the future to see how Silic was doing, I could see another war with the 2 other Marquis-ranked demons, but that was for another time. Staring at me, who was slowly walking towards the portal, Kevin impatiently said, "You going?" Keeping the portal open actually took quite a toll on his body. The more Ren delayed, the bigger the toll his body faced. He was understandably getting annoyed. "Yup, coming, hold on a sec." And as I also understood this, I hurried up my footsteps and prepared myself to enter the portal. Wait. However, right before stepping into the portal, recalling something and glancing at my watch, I quickly tapped on it. Shortly after, explosions rang all over the castle as the whole structure shook. Startled, Kevin looked at me in shock as he exclaimed, "Ren, what are you doing?" Glancing at Kevin, I said in a matter-of-fact tone, "I'm just hiding our traces." Like I said before, I didn't want anyone to find out that we've infiltrated the building through the back entrance, therefore, I installed explosives everywhere. This way, once they investigated, chances of them finding Silic were ever lower. Although once he signed a contract, the chances of him getting discovered were already low. With this, his chances of being discovered were going to be even lower, allowing him to gain strength without too much trouble. the lower the chances of him getting discovered the better. I admit that my plan was not the most perfect one, as there were a couple of more loopholes in my plan that could expose Scylla. However, given that the demons were currently in the middle of a war, chances of them finding out about Scylla were low. Which was good enough for me, and so I could more or less now be satisfied with the outcome. Opening his mouth, Kevin wanted to say a lot of things, but given that this was a building that housed demons, he shut his mouth. Why should he care if the demons suffered? In fact, he wanted nothing more for them to burn in hell. I see. Anyhow, hurry up, I can't hold on for too long. Taking one last look at the treasury before me, shaking my head, I stepped into the portal. It was really a pity that I couldn't loot everything. As I stepped into the portal, just like before, the world around me turned dark and I lost all of my senses. It was about time I returned back to Earth. Gah, fuck. Passing through the portal, the first thing I felt when I felt my senses return was something heavy landing on my back. Turning around, I found Kevin's body slumped on top of me. Can you get off? Opening his eyes slightly and seeing the position he was in, Kevin scratched the back of his head and embarrassingly said, "Sorry, opening the portal took a lot of energy." Trying to stand up, I instantly felt my back go numb as I glared at Kevin. Usually, he wouldn't have passed out like this, but given the fact that he used most of his energy keeping the portal open, Kevin found himself passing out for a bit. "Gah, my God, are you some kind of whale?" "Sorry." Holding onto my back, my face scrunched up from the pain as I sat up straight. Just when I was about to scratch my cheek, I suddenly found my hand smacking me on my cheek. The hell? Cursing out loud, I suddenly remembered that the gravity here was 3 times lighter than that of Amora's, resulting in me suddenly slapping my face because my every movement was now lighter. PFFTT. As I was caressing my cheek due to the pain, I suddenly heard the faint sound of laughter coming from my left-hand side. Turning around, I soon spotted Kevin covering his mouth as his cheeks puffed up. Gritting my teeth, I glared at Kevin. "You think this is funny?" Shaking his head, Kevin tried to refuse, but the trembling of his body immediately sold him out. PFFFTT, no. "Ah, I see. I'll remember this." Finally, after hearing my statement, Kevin couldn't hold it anymore and burst out laughing as he held onto his stomach. PFTTT. "I can't believe you slapped your own face. You should have seen the look on your face." Smiling, but not smiling at the same time, I nodded my head as I imprinted Kevin's laughing image inside of my mind. Okay, keep laughing. Just keep in mind that I will remember this moment. Oh, Kevin. Had you known you messed with your own creator, you wouldn't be laughing, would ya? Ads by Pub Future. Very well, I will definitely remember this moment. Sigh. Carefully standing up, I slowly made my way towards my sofa and slumped on it. Sighing out loud, I softly mumbled, Talk about a great return. The first thing that happened when I returned to Earth was having Kevin fall on top of my back and me slapping myself. Just great. Huh? As I was slumped on the sofa, frowning, I suddenly noticed something weird happening inside of my body. Closing my eyes to understand what it was, my eyes soon lit up. "Kevin, quick, give me the sky grass." Wiping a tear from the corner of his eyes, suddenly sensing something and noticing the solemnness in my voice, Kevin sobered up and asked, "Huh? The sky grass?" Nodding I extended my hand and urgently said, "Yup, I'm about to rank up." "Oh, here." Hearing that I was about to rank up, without hesitation, taking out a stalk of sky grass from his dimensional space, Kevin quickly handed it to me. "Thanks." Without hesitation, I took the sky grass from his hands and placed it in my mouth, not caring for the least about how I looked. I could feel it. I was on the verge of breaking through to rank. Honestly, I had expected this to happen in another month, but given that I had spent a month in Amora where the gravity was 3 times that of Earth, every moment I spent there was like training. It came as to no surprise as to why I was now on the verge of breaking through as soon as I came to Earth. Staring at me who was about to rank up, Kevin asked, "Should I go?" Suppressing my rank, I looked at Kevin and nodded my head.
Yeah.
I needed to be fully focused when I was ranking as any distraction could prove to be extremely detrimental. With Kevin understanding this, he naturally proposed to leave so that I wouldn't get distracted. Naturally, I didn't refuse his intentions. Staring at me solemnly, Kevin nodded his head and proceeded to make his way out of the room. "All right, I'll see you at the academy."
Yeah.
"See you." Once again waving
Goodbye.
to me, Kevin directly left my room, leaving me alone. As soon as Kevin left, a white hue shrouded my body as veins bulged out of my body. KHH, this is more painful than I expected. Chewing on the sky grass, I slowly felt my body burn up due to how potent the effects of the grass were. Honestly, using the sky grass was a bit of a waste as it could help still work on higher ranks, but I needed to get stronger faster. Moreover, there were many other opportunities out there for me to find a similar herb like the sky grass. Therefore, persevering through the pain, I kept on chewing on the grass that was in my mouth.
Ha. Ha. Ha.
Panting heavily, I kept on chewing as the pain on my body intensified with every chew of the grass. Multiple times I wanted to stop chewing, but gritting my teeth and enduring the pain, I kept on chewing. Saliva slowly dripped down from my mouth. Finally, after an unknown period of time, the white hue around my body shrouded the whole room as I suddenly felt my body become a lot stronger and sturdier. Just like my previous experiences, all of my senses sharpened as everything around me became more clear. Staring at my muscles for a couple of seconds, I opened my status window and checked out my stats. Status . Name, Rendover. Rank, E+. Strength, E+. Agility, E. Stamina, E+. Intelligence, E+. Mana capacity, E. Luck. Charm, F. Profession. Swordsmanship, LVL. 3. The degree of understanding of the sword has evolved to the next level. User will find it easier to understand concepts that were previously harder to understand. Martial Manual. Keiki Style, Greater Realm of Mastery. Sword art created by Grandmaster Toshimoto Keiki. A 5-star module that focused primarily on reaching the apex of swordsmanship and speed. Upon mastery, the sword art becomes so fast that before an opponent could even think about their next move, their heads would already be rolling on the ground. Ring of Vindication, Minor Realm of Mastery. Highly advanced sword art that creates a perfect ring of defense around the user. Upon mastery, the ring can create a 3-dimensional sphere that protects the user from all sides. Because of the lack of offensive capabilities, the manual was graded 3 stars. Drifting Steps, Greater Realm of Mastery. Movement art that progresses with each step. With every step taken, user speed will increase. Unless user stops, speed will continuously increase until the user either runs out of mana or due to injury. Skills. G. A Monarch's Indifference. A skill that enables users to erase all emotions and act as a supreme monarch that only calculates the best option regardless of circumstance. D. The One. A skill that enables the user to instill fear into the opponent's minds, resulting in them feeling like they were standing before a sovereign that overlooked everything. The skill may work on individuals who are 1 rank higher than them. However, if the difference between the 2 parties is greater than 2 ranks, the skill effect diminishes. Yes, I ranked up twice. Staring at my status screen, a large smile appeared on my face as I noticed my rank go from rank all the way to rank. A 2-rank increase. This was a phenomenal boost in my strength as I was now caught up with Jean. Aside from Kevin, I was pretty much the strongest first year in the academy alongside Jean. In fact, since I knew Jean like the back of my hand, I was probably stronger than him. My charm. As I was rejoicing about my rank increase, staring at my charm, I suddenly noticed that it also ranked up. Not once but twice. With my mouth trembling, I suddenly found small tear traced down from my cheek all the way down to my chin as I closed my eyes and secretly thanked the gods. Thou shalt reward the diligent. After months of constant cuckblocks, I was finally rewarded for my diligence. My one cursed stat finally improved. I honestly wasn't sure whether to be happier about my rank increase or my charm increase. What a tough decision. That aside. Modai, 1637. Glancing at my watch and staring at the time and date, I knew that the day was not over. Squinting my eyes as my demeanor became incomparably serious, interlocking my fingers together, I softly mumbled. It is about time I resolved something that has been plaguing me since coming here. It was about time I dealt with Matthew and cured my parents. Chapter 187, When Everything Comes Crashing Down, 1.
What?
Pudding. Sitting on the red sofa in my parents' house, I watched as Nola happily played with Pudding aka Angelica in the living room. A peaceful and relaxed smile appeared on my face. For the past month, I had to be on constant alert as I was in a completely new planet where dangers lied everywhere. From infiltrating Good Kodra to infiltrating Seton and assassinating the young chief. Not a moment that I spent in Amora did I relax or let my guard down. Honestly, this relaxing atmosphere where I didn't have to worry about someone attacking me or had to be on constant alert was a nice change of pace. I really needed this. Calm down, Nola, you're going to scare the cat if you do that. Sitting next to me, my mother placed her hand on her cheek as a troubled look appeared on her face. Staring at me who was peacefully lying down on the sofa, she tapped my shoulder and worriedly said, Rin, do something about this, I don't want Nola to get hurt. Glancing at my mom, I reassured her.
Nah.
It's fine, Pudding is a very docile cat. Is that so? Waving it off, I further reassured her that everything was fine.
Yeah.
She's a very gentle one. She won't hurt a fly. Well, if you say so. Trusting my words, my mother finally calmed down. Honestly, when my parents saw Angelica for the first time, they were surprised. The reaction I got from my mom rendered me speechless. She immediately hugged me and apologized to me by saying things like, For you to go all the way and buy a cat, you must have been lonely. Come here, Mama will comfort you. I'm sorry for not being with you all the times.
Yeah.
My speechless reaction was understandable. This would have never have happened if Angelica remained as a ring, but tired of being a ring, Angelica transformed into her usual cat form. I guess she disliked always being on my finger, but who was I to bash her for it? Had I been in her position, I probably would have felt the same way. Either way, her being in her cat form was ideal. Especially since I needed for her to stay with my parents for a bit whilst I took care of the trash. Someone had to protect them whilst I was gone after all. Sitting on the floor of the living room, turning her head in my direction, Angelica spoke to me inside of my mind. Human, get this monkey away from me. Hearing Angelica's voice inside of my head, I shook my head as an odd look appeared on my face. Stop pretending, I know that you've fallen for the charms of little Nola. Staring at Nola happily petting Angelica with her small hands, I knew that Angelica had fallen for her charms. If she disliked it so much she could have simply moved away, but she didn't, as she just laid on the ground with Nola caressing her back constantly. Moreover, whilst Nola was caressing her, Angelica's ears were perked upright, indicating that she liked it. Feigning ignorance, Angelica angrily said, "What are you talking about, human?" Raising my brow and looking at Angelica, I shook my head disappointedly. Then why are you letting her pet you? She may have been able to fool someone else, but not me. Since she had previously told me she disliked being treated like a cat, why would just be so docile in front of Nola? Just because she was a child? No, that was not it. She had fallen. Slightly flustered, Angelica turned her head sideways and said, Because she is a child." Hearing her response, I smirked at her. "Sure, what about all of the children outside that wanted to pet you?" On the way here, there were many children Nola's age that wanted to caress her, but Angelica outright refused them as she just ignored them or moved away. There was no way that excuse would work on me. Pausing for a second and realizing that she couldn't refute as I was indeed right, Angelica glared at me. "Shut up, human." Crossing my legs, I shook my head and clicked my tongue. "Tsk, you tsundura." Tsundur? What is that?
Hmm.
Who knows? Feigning ignorance, I proceeded to look at my watch. "Hey, human, what does tsundur mean? Answer me." Whatever she said, I just ignored it. Better not let her know what it means or I'll get a massive headache. Either way, after I managed to rank up, I immediately headed towards my parents' house to get rid of the curse. The less time I wasted, the better. Every single second that my parents had the curse was second more that they were in danger. Although it was a Monday and tomorrow was a school day, if I headed back in the morning, I should only miss the first lecture with Donna being the professor in charge. Although I might get scolded a bit, with my current relationship with Donna, I would at most just be scolded. After all, this was far more important. Why would I care about being scolded? Standing up and heading towards the kitchen area, I looked at my mom and asked, "Mom, would you like some tea?" Scrolling through her phone, hearing my call, and raising her head, my mom covered her mouth as she asked, "Oh, sweetie, you're going to make some tea?"
Yeah.
Nodding my head, I stared at my father who was sitting at the living room table busy looking through some files. He had glaring dark circles beneath his eyes which were evident signs of the fact that he was currently being overworked. Secretly clenching my fists behind my back, I smiled and said,
Yeah.
"I'll make one for Dad that too." Smiling brightly, my mother nodded her head. "What a sweetheart, of course, I would love some tea." "Then some tea you shall get." Oh dear, I truly have the most handsome and wonderful son. Indeed. Hearing my mother's comments, I couldn't agree more. With my charm now having risen to F rank, if before I could topple countries, I could now topple continents. What she said was very understandable and factual. Kevin who? Making my way towards the kitchen, Nola suddenly ran up to me as she exclaimed, "Nola too. Nola wants tea." Staring at Nola, I shook my head. "Sorry Nola, but you can't." Looking up to me as a hurt look appeared on her face, Nola clasped her hands together as she weakly said, "Why can't Nola have tea?" Looking at Nola's crystal eyes that seemed to burst at any moment, I felt a slight ping inside of my heart as I kneeled down on the floor and stood at eye level with her. Wiping the tears that were about to fall from her cheeks, I explained, "Nola, you can't have the tea because it is very bitter, just like coffee. You don't like bitter, right?" Shaking her head, Nola said, Coffee blurg. No, like bitter." "Good, how about this? I'll give you a cup of hot cocoa instead, does that sound good?" Hearing my proposition, Nola instantly brightened up as she repeatedly nodded her head. Great." Seeing that Nola had calmed down, standing up I patted her in the head, resulting in her letting out a small giggle. Smiling, I headed to the kitchen and proceeded to look around the kitchen for the tools needed to make the tea. If I don't remember wrong, the stuff should be here. Taking out the tea equipment, I quickly boiled the water in the kettle and took out the tea leaves from the top cupboard. Waiting for the water to boil, sneakily taking 2 out of the 4 Zuran fruits in my possession, I took a deep breath. Hopefully, this works. Great. Seeing that Nola had calmed down, standing up I patted her in the head, resulting in her letting out a small giggle. Smiling, I headed to the kitchen and proceeded to look around the kitchen for the tools needed to make the tea. If I don't remember wrong, the stuff should be here. Taking out the tea equipment, I quickly boiled the water in the kettle and took out the tea leaves from the top cupboard. Waiting for the water to boil, sneakily taking 2 out of the 4 Zuran fruits in my possession, I took a deep breath. Hopefully, this works. Although I knew that the fruits would without a doubt cure my parents of the curse, I was still quite nervous. There was this voice inside of my mind that kept asking what ifs, resulting in me becoming nervous. However, this only lasted for a brief moment as I was able to quickly calm down. There was no point in being nervous. Being nervous was not going to solve anything. It was an unnecessary emotion that only further added to my anxiety and prevented me from thinking rationally. I needed to learn to always remain composed at all times. Just like in this case, even if the cure doesn't work, panicking was not going to solve anything. I needed to remain cool-headed at all times regardless of the situation. Bwig Bruda. Look at pudding. Yes, Nola. As I was making the tea, snapping me out of my thoughts was Nola's voice that came all the way from the living room. Look. Look. Look at pudding. Staring at Nola from the kitchen, my eyes drifted towards the direction she was pointing at, and I soon spotted Angelica in her cat form wearing black sunglasses with a pink tiara on top of her head. PFFTT. Caught off guard, I almost laughed out loud as my body trembled uncontrollably. Staring at Angelica's unamused face that seemed as though she wanted to bury herself in the ground, I had to forcefully bite my tongue to try to prevent myself from laughing out loud. It was only after a couple of minutes that I was somewhat able to calm myself down. Weakly looking away from Angelica, who was glaring daggers at me, I secretly did a thumbs up. She looks fantastic, Nola. Smiling widely, Nola clapped her little hands together. Yeah. Human, do you want me to gauge your eyes out? I'm good. Shaking my head, I proceeded to make my way back to the kitchen as I tried to hold my laughter back. In the end, even a borderline Viscount-ranked demon fell for Nola's charms. Ding! As I was still waiting for the water to boil, feeling my pocket vibrate, staring at the caller ID, I quickly picked up the call and answered in a low voice so that my parents wouldn't hear. Small Snake, is everything ready? After a short pause, Small Snake's voice echoed from the speaker of the phone. Yes, we are outside the establishment of the target. Frowning slightly, I proceeded to nod my head. Have you got your eyes on the target? What is he doing? The target is currently resting after having attended a banquet with his father. They are currently staying inside of Hotel de la Morca in Avenue Street XXX. Is his father with him? No, he is currently staying in a separate room of the establishment. Whilst playing with the Zuran fruit in my hand, I bit my lips for a couple of seconds before I nodded my head. Good, I'll be there shortly. Report anything to me if you see the target escaping. Okay. Hanging up the phone, my face became incomparably solemn. Staring at the tea before me that was turning murkier and murkier by the minute, I knew that once my parents ingested it and the curse was broken, Matthew would quickly be made aware of what had happened. The reason he would notice it was because as soon as the curse was removed, the demon Matthew was contracted with would suffer an intense backlash, resulting in him becoming heavily injured. And so without a doubt, the demon would directly go to Matthew to find out what was going on. meaning that it was the perfect time for me to strike. Kill both Matthew and the demon behind him in one fell swoop. This was the plan. Currently, Small Snake and Leopold were surveilling the building Matthew was on, and so I would instantly be notified if anything happened or if Matthew tried to escape. I had made these arrangements prior to coming to Amora, as I knew this would have happened. The quicker I dealt with them, the higher the chances of me succeeding. Hoo! Taking a deep breath and placing the 2 teacups on the tray, I then proceeded to cut the 2 Zurin fruits open and squeezed the juices into the tea. After making sure I squeezed all the juices from the fruits, placing the used-up fruits back in my dimensional space, with a smile on my face I proceeded to make my way towards my parents. "Tea's ready,"